Have you ever felt like your dreams are just impossible? You have ambitions, you have goals, you have things you want to achieve, but the thing that is actually stopping you is your own mind, and that's what's limiting you. This is something that I went through when I was applying for my dream university and dream degree, and to be honest, I just thought it was impossible for me to get in, that I'd never make it. But the thing that actually ended up saving me was a mindset shift. It's not about talent, it's not about intelligence, it's about self-belief. That's probably the most important thing that's going to affect your chances of whatever it is that you want to achieve. If you're someone who's felt like you're too delusional, your dreams are too big, or maybe you're someone who struggles with believing yourself in the first place and think that you're not good enough for things, I really hope that this video helped. In this video, I thought it'd be a really good idea to take a look at self-belief and how we can actually reframe our minds for success and to become the best versions of ourselves so that we can grow and learn. I'm Loveleen, a medical student at King's College London, and I love learning and growing to become a better person. I'm passionate about mindset, health and growth, and my aim is for us to create a community where we support one another to become our best selves, no matter what it is that we want to achieve in life. And I'd love for you to join this journey with me so that we can grow together. So the first concept that I actually want to look at is the idea of delusion. You've probably heard of this before as well, where people just think that they're definitely going to achieve that dream. It doesn't matter, it just kind of has to work out. And this is essentially where delusion comes in. The idea that your goals and your dreams should scare you, even if you don't have a concrete plan right now, or to other people it sounds like your dream and goal is almost crazy. That doesn't matter. And I think being a little bit delusional is actually very important, because this is where that self-belief element comes in. It's not just about your intelligence, and it's not just about your talent, because if you don't believe and be delusional about what you can achieve, are you really going to end up hitting that target? It seems like it doesn't matter about getting smarter, getting better, trying to gain skills necessarily. It's more about reframing your mindset and actually believing you can achieve something. And I'm going to tell you, there's actual neuroscience behind this. So that's what we're going to take a look at so that we can see how we can reframe and shift our perspectives. So what we're going to do now is actually break down the science of belief. How do you actually believe in yourself to achieve dreams? Because there is actual neuroscience behind this, and it's not just a vibe or a mood that you're getting from yourself. A psychologist called Bandura actually spent some time studying the idea that why do two individuals who maybe have potentially similar skill sets and similar starting points and similar talents, but the only difference is their belief and mindset towards things, one who believes in themselves more may actually end up doing way better than the other person, and their results are better. And this is where the idea of something called self-efficacy comes from, and he actually coined this term. Bandura defines self-efficacy as an individual's judgment of their own capabilities to be able to organize and execute certain actions that's going to get them a certain result in a specific domain of their life. So to simplify this down, essentially what this definition is saying is how much do you believe and put trust into yourself to be able to figure something out in a specific domain in your life, a specific area or aspect of what you're doing in order to get the results that you want. And there are a couple of important things to highlight from this definition before we get into it into more detail. So the first thing is that it's the idea of figuring it out. Even if you don't know everything about that field that you're working in, it's the fact that you have trust in yourself to be able to figure it out, to work it out, to execute the right planning and strategic decision making that you need to do in order to achieve the result that you want in that specific area. The second thing that's really important to understand from this definition is that it's domain specific. What that means is your confidence and your belief in your ability to figure things out is specific to one domain, one aspect of your life. For example, you may have very high self-efficacy in public speaking and presenting, but very low self-efficacy in coding skills, for example. This is a really clear indication of how you can see that self-efficacy is part of a certain domain in your life, and it's something that's important that you need to develop in different areas. This does kind of highlight that when people say just believe in yourself, it is a little bit vague, and I know that sounds harsh, but the truth is it's not enough information to describe how can you actually make yourself feel more confident in the thing that you're doing so that you have more trust in yourself. There's a bit more behind it, and what you essentially want to try and do is how can you put trust into yourself and make yourself feel like that you know exactly what you're going to do and the steps to execute in order to get that result that you want. So why should you be someone who has a high self-efficacy and in ideally loads of different aspects of your life and try to develop this skill across many domains? So individuals who have high self-efficacy, it has been shown that they're able to respond to adversity and stress better. They're able to bounce back from difficult situations much more easily, cope with stress. And remember that aspect that I mentioned where I spoke about problem solving aspects and how you need to be able to figure things out. If something goes wrong in that problem solving aspect, let's say things didn't go how you were hoping for them to, If you are an individual who has high self-efficacy, you realize that that problem may be due to poor planning, a strategic mistake that you made. It's more of an external factor, and as a result, you're going to modify that, maybe plan better for whatever situation that is. You do not think it's a flaw in your character. This basically means that you're more willing to make changes and look in your environment and see what is affecting the result of this action. What can you change to improve the result of that? You're not automatically assuming that it's a flaw within yourself and saying that it's never going to work. And looking at individuals who have lower self-efficacy, it has been shown that these individuals don't tend to cope and respond to stress as well. They will avoid taking on new challenges or learning new things, and that problem-solving aspect which I mentioned, they will assume that the problem that went wrong or the thing that they weren't able to figure out, it's some sort of intrinsic fault in their own abilities. Whether or not that may be true, they will always assume that is to be a fact, and as a result they will look at the fact that they cannot do that then, and they won't see what are the external factors or extrinsic situations that they do have control over that they can change in order to get a different result that next time. So it's almost like they have a bit more of a fixed mindset and they'll focus more on weaknesses. So by comparing this, we can obviously see that individuals with high self-efficacy, they're able to bounce back from difficult situations, they're able to keep going. And if you can develop high self-efficacy in different areas of your life, it basically means that you're able to keep going, and this is where intelligence essentially doesn't matter. If you're looking at two individuals with maybe same ability, same IQ, and one of them has high self-efficacy, the other has low self-efficacy, the individual has more belief in their abilities and the fact that they can change things in the external environment to learn and grow and adapt to that situation. They are theoretically going to do better than the person who thinks that, oh, okay, I'm not good enough for this, and just stops immediately. So ideally, we all want to be individuals who have this high self-efficacy in ideally every aspect of our lives. So how do we even get to that stage? This is something that I'm sure all of us would love to be able to do. This is where something called neuroplasticity becomes very important, and this is a super interesting idea. So many years ago, scientists used to think that the brain was fixed. Once it's developed, that's it, and it doesn't undergo basically any more changes. But we now know that's not true at all. Neuroplasticity is your brain's ability to change and actually form new neurons and connections. So your brain is literally rewiring itself. Your brain actually physically reorganizes itself and changes the arrangement of neurons based on what you think, you do, and the things that you learn. And this can happen at any stage in your life, actually. And this is something that's super powerful because it tells us that the actions that you're carrying out, the words that you're saying to yourself, you can physically change your brain from it, which means you can kind of become anyone you want. So we can basically weaponize this neuroplasticity that we have in order to become someone with high self-efficacy by adopting your mindset to change and admit that yes, you actually have a growth mindset is something that is so powerful. As a result, you can essentially adapt the neurons within your brain by telling yourself that it's not an intrinsic fault within your abilities. If you can train your brain to think that you are someone who likes trying new experiences, who wants to learn new things in that specific domain of your life, you can force yourself to become an individual with high self-efficacy. So there is an actual mechanism behind training yourself to have higher self-efficacy. And we're going to go back and take a look at Bandura's 4 principles and sources for building self-efficacy, because this is something that we can incorporate into all of our lives to help us to do this. The first and most powerful of these is mastery experiences. What this basically means is that you need to almost have an evidence log of everything that you have achieved to make yourself feel better and show that you have the abilities to achieve these things. So how can you actually start to gain this mastery experience, especially if it's a new area of your life that maybe you don't feel as confident in or you don't already have wins stacked for you? I would say that a really important thing to do is to start compounding small wins early. Even the tiniest thing could be counted as a win. For example, let's say you want to start writing a book. Just coming up with the name of your first character, compound that as a win, because what happens is your brain starts to reinforce that and think, I actually have the abilities to keep going with this thing. And especially at the beginning, this is super important. The reason I say this is because something I've noticed personally within myself is that if I set a goal as almost like an evidence for myself as, yes, I can achieve this thing, but that goal ends up being a little bit too big, what ends up happening is that I don't meet that and think you don't have the abilities for that thing, or maybe you end up being really demotivated. So by starting off essentially as easy as possible so that you can't mess up the goal is really going to help you. Then of course, the more comfortable you get with that specific domain or whatever goal it is that you're working towards, you compound these small early wins so that your brain now knows that, yes, I'm capable of achieving this thing, and then start to move ahead with bigger goals. And because you've almost created that mini evidence log for yourself, you can tell yourself and your brain will know that, yes, you can keep going with this and you can get the results that you want. And as a side note, another thing that can be super helpful is that if you're struggling to think of wins in whatever area it is in your life, I always recommend literally just writing down an evidence log, taking a piece of paper and writing down everything that you're proud of yourself for achieving in a certain area of your life or across your life. This is really going to help you to feel better and actually tell your brain you're doing so well. So make sure to use this as well in order to create almost those set of mastery experiences that you can look back on and reflect on. The reason I think this is super important is because this is something that I struggle with, and I think that I almost forget the wins that I've compounded, and especially the early ones where you're very proud of yourself and you're just starting out on something new. It's very easy to forget those and start looking ahead and thinking, how can you do better? How can you do more? And if you kind of forget those early wins that you're compounding, you almost start losing faith in your abilities again, because you keep setting the goalpost higher and thinking, I'm not achieving this thing which I'm working towards. So this is something that even I struggle with, and I think having an evidence log or just reminding yourself every now and again of how far you've come is really going to help with that. Bandura's second principle is vicarious experiences. What this basically means is that looking at people and individuals who are similar to you, who have achieved the thing that you want to, whether they are of the same background of you, gone through the same struggles, whatever it is, that relatability factor that you have to them, by seeing them achieve the things that you want to do, it's telling your brain that you can achieve that too, because someone who is similar to you has gone through that. This is why I think it's super important, especially that we have social media. I love looking at role models, people who are similar to me, or people who have achieved cool things that I also really admire and want to do as well. I think this is so important because it tells your brain that if they can do it, you can do it too, and it reinforces that belief in yourself a bit more. It is better, in my opinion, that rather than looking at someone who's completely a genius and has managed to achieve things effortlessly, whilst that is amazing and by no means downgrades their achievement, if you're trying to look for motivation, I think it's always powerful to look at someone whose story may be similar to you or who they are similar to you and use them as a role model to prove to yourself that it's completely possible for you to achieve that as well. This is why I think it's super important that, especially with social media, one thing that I'm very mindful of is making sure that I have almost like a digital community where I can look at people who I admire and who I really want to be like. And I think this is super important. Joining communities where you feel like growth and the principles that are important to you are really being showcased there. The third is verbal persuasion, being told that you can achieve something. So if someone else tells you and says that I believe you can do this or you've got this, but here's the important thing to remember. It can't just be anyone coming up to you. The person who is saying this to you has to be someone that you respect and who you genuinely believe this from. This is super important so that you actually believe what they're saying and take it to heart. It is always really nice to hear from someone that you're going to do amazing or that they really believe in you and those sorts of things. But these words of affirmation essentially have to be coming from someone whose judgment you trust. If you trust this person's judgment, when they tell you that they believe that you're going to achieve whatever it is that you're working towards, you're more likely to trust it compared to someone, if you don't trust their judgment at all, you'll think that maybe they're making a mistake or there is an error in their judgment. So this is why it's super important to make sure, and in my opinion as well, having the right friends and the right environment around you, individuals who you respect, who you're working together with. I think this is extremely important, and it's something that you're always working towards because it means that you're able to support one another more easily and create that environment where you also respect one another. You're working towards things that you are all maybe similar interests in, or even different areas of your life. It's more about that growth factor, which I think is really important because it means that you're able to motivate each other, and that means you actually trust what the other person is saying. Another thing that I really like about this one is that if you have friends who have been there on the journey with you of whatever it is that you're going through, they will remember your small wins for you as well. So going back to our first point of mastery experiences, if you're someone who maybe forgets about the things that you've achieved, even those small early wins, as I'm someone who does this as well, talking to your friends, especially when you feel demotivated, or to people you trust and look up to, getting their advice, they will almost remind you of how far you've come as well. And this, I think, is another great way of being motivated. And the fourth is your physiological and emotional states. What this basically means is how do you interpret the physical sensations and emotions and physiology that you're experiencing within your body. Let's say we have two individuals, for example. Both of them have to give a big speech. They are both experiencing maybe a racing heart. They feel very jumpy and they feel like they need to keep moving and almost a little bit nervous. Now, the difference between these two people and what's going to impact their performance is how do they interpret these emotions. If the first person interprets this as, oh my gosh, I'm so nervous, I'm going to completely mess up the speech, I'm going to fail, they are more likely to do that because that is how they think their body is reacting. But if we compare them to the second person, let's say this person thinks that, okay, I'm starting to feel excited, I'm starting to feel maybe pumped up about the presentation or the thing that they're going to talk about, and that I'm just getting adrenaline and I'm actually getting excited for this thing. That person, because they're interpreting their physiological symptoms in a positive way, they are actually more likely to do better in comparison to the first individual. Even if, again, same intelligence maybe, same presentation, same thing that they want to talk about, whatever it is, the fact is the way they're interpreting how they feel, they're almost reinforcing that belief. So by looking at these 4 key principles from Bandura, I think it shows that we can actually try to start implementing some of these in daily life and in our thought processes. And using neuroplasticity, by having that on our side, you can actually reframe your brain and change the way you think. And I think this is something that's really powerful and definitely what I want to work towards, because it means that the thoughts that you're thinking about every single day, they will actually change your self-efficacy, the type of person you are, and your ability to cope with difficult situations, which again, I think is a super powerful thing. And the idea of self-efficacy is definitely something I've experienced before, even if I didn't realize it at the time. And it's something I'm learning about now as well, because as I mentioned, it's domain specific, which means that it only applies to a certain area of your life. So you kind of have to keep relearning it in different aspects of your life. I remember when wanting to apply for my dream university and degree, it felt so impossible. And I was basically the person with low self-efficacy. I just assumed that it was impossible. I assumed I wasn't smart enough, I wasn't good enough, that I just wasn't going to get in, that they wouldn't want me. And I had all of these kind of preconceived thoughts. But what I started doing was essentially compounding those early wins at the beginning. Even if I didn't realize it at the time, the way I approached it was that, okay, fine, I feel like this now, but what I'm going to do is just start small and see how this works out. So I literally took early wins and just assumed that they were a big win for myself at the time. And over time, what happened was that I compounded these wins, I felt better, and there was a point where I had this mindset shift and realized I trust myself and my skills, and that I'm going to just learn the things that I need to make sure I'm doing so that I can achieve this. And thankfully I did go on to end up getting into my dream uni and degree. And even if I didn't realize it at the time, there was a mindset shift during that period of time when I was in the application process. And it really shows how important it is and potentially change the outcome of how things would have gone, because I had that realization that I need to change my mindset and my approach. Because if you keep thinking that things aren't going to work out, that you are going to fail, unfortunately, from what we've looked at today, it is more likely that's going to happen. So instead, by using Bandura's 4 principles and trying to reframe your mindset and approach to things is going to be so much more powerful in helping you to get closer to that thing that you want to. And because self-efficacy is definitely something that's domain specific and only applies to your confidence in a certain area of your life, it's still something that I'm learning now as well. With starting a new content page and wanting to help people and create a community of growth, it feels terrifying. It feels like maybe not everyone would want to watch the content, maybe it's things that people won't enjoy. And one thing I'm really passionate about is actually making a community which is supportive and encourages growth and really helps people. But again, it brings in doubts and thinks, is this what individuals actually want? Would this even help anyone? And this is almost the idea where I'm kind of going through that process again of where you have lower self-efficacy and you're trying to make yourself into someone who has higher self-efficacy. So regardless of the results, it's almost, I have to reframe my mindset to think that it doesn't matter how the results go for now, as long as it's even helping one person, or even if one person is interested in it, that's good enough. And taking those small wins early. And so ultimately the important thing is about kind of building a community and supporting other individuals as well. And I think those 4 principles that we mentioned that Bandura had spoken about, they are really important in any area of life that you want to try to improve in. And by trying to use those, I think it really helps in order to help you to become that person with high self-efficacy and build your resilience in that area of your life. If any of this resonated with you, if you're someone who's felt like you're too delusional, your dreams are too big, or maybe you're someone who struggles with believing yourself in the first place and think that you're not good enough for things, I really hope that this video helped you. This is something that I'm still learning as well. Becoming someone with higher self-efficacy is definitely something that takes practice. And I'd love for you to join the community with me so that we can keep growing together to become better versions of ourselves.